And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Tuesday, April 8th, 1:06 in the afternoon. Temperatures outside in the upper 30s to right around 40 degrees across much of the area. And it's going to be a pretty sunny day, although we do have some clouds coming in from the west into the valley. But other than that, not too bad. A little on the breezy side, but at least it's warmer than yesterday, and we're going in the right direction. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette, it's feeling a little bit better today, and we've got even warmer weather just around the corner, too. So that's good news.
It is better. It's a little chill in the air, but it's April, and this is fairly normal. I still see skiffs of snow out there. We're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and the good news is, we're getting into that time where these snow chances are going to become a little less frequent, and I'd like to say we're done with the snow for the season, but I just don't, not quite yet. Not quite yet.
No, I say that it's pretty doubtful if you thought we were done. But you have been saying there will be some precipitation events on their way soon enough, and likely just in the form of rain.
Yeah, it looks like it as we head into this upcoming weekend. There is a little bit of precip in the forecast. Not looking at a lot, but I think the good news is areas out to the west that need it badly, up in the northwestern corner of the state, they're going to get some much-needed precip, although some of it's going to come in the form of snow.
Yeah, and they're going. I mean, those folks are it was kind of like ground zero yesterday. There was a lot of action happening for many areas. Thanks to Josh again yesterday. He reminded me we do have wheat in the ground already in the southern end of the Red River Valley. Mm-hmm. So we are seeing activity. I've had a couple farmers. This was last week in Hillsboro. I had a farmer mention he anticipated having wheat and maybe even some sugar beets in the ground prior to Easter. And if I'm not mistaken, wow. Easter is like the 19th of April.
Yeah, so we're looking 20th. So a week from this coming weekend. Yeah. Not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Yep. And we're going to take a look at our field for Here We Grow very shortly and just assess how long until we're in the field there. Good deal.
Well, we've got, again, some nicer weather in the forecast as we head into the rest of the week. For the rest of today, we're looking at the sunshine being replaced by some high clouds. Still on the breezy side with temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 40s across much of the area with those southeast winds at about 10 to 25. Tonight, cloudy skies, an isolated shower possible, but again, nothing widespread with temps dipping down into the 30s. And for your Wednesday, look for a mix of sun and clouds and a chance for an isolated shower late in the day, more likely Wednesday night, and highs tomorrow in the mid to upper 50s. And then we turn a little bit cooler on Thursday with a morning shower, and then winds turn around to the northwest 10 to 25 and highs only in the upper 40s. It'll feel cooler than that, though, with the wind. And then a quick rebound Friday, pick day of the week with temperatures in the low 60s. And it will turn breezy in the afternoon with winds picking up out of the south. And a windy weekend, especially Saturday. We'll have winds gusting well over 30 out of the south. But we'll warm up into the upper 60s on Saturday. And then Sunday, the area of low pressure rides out of the northern Rockies. And that's going to give a little bit of precip into the area, some scattered showers into the eastern third of the state, and some much-needed precip out west. Not a lot, but we're getting some indications, a quarter inch, maybe a little bit more. Some of that may form or fall in the form of snow out in the far western part of the state, and then much cooler weather to start off next week with temperatures falling back into the 40s on Monday.
Well, hopefully all of the weather is nice, bright, and shining when the championship NDSU football team, the Bison, return from the White House. They are going to be there tomorrow, April the 9th. And so, right here from the Flag Family Media, we're packing up the PetroServe USA microphones and giving you all the action that's going on in the nation's capital. Bison are going everywhere. There'll be updates, behind-the-scenes videos, and so much more. They're taking the time to visit with President Trump, also Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, and of course, all other places they might be stopping by. So thank you to PetroServe USA, the hot tub and sauna store next to Costco in West Fargo, and Roe and Joe Junk Haul and Removal. When it's got to go, call Roe and Joe online at roeandjoejunk.com. Once again, go Bison. See y'all when you get back.
Now, how many times have they been out to the White House? This isn't their first time.
Oh, no. They've been out there a couple of times before. I think one of the media frenzies was, I can't remember if it was the last time they were out there, but they were served McDonald's. I did find that kind of funny.
I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, here we have programs with beef producers, such as Build the Base Beef in South Dakota, where we make sure that fresh beef and proteins get to athletic departments. We do the same thing here at NDSU and UND. And then there's McDonald's at the White House. Well, I guess it's like a kid's meal. It's a great day. So I wonder how many cheeseburgers a defensive end can eat. And I bet it's a lot.
I'd be afraid to find out. It might be cheaper to feed them otherwise, something else.
Hard to say right now, yes.
Oh, man. But we've got I just heard, okay, so the Farm Bill is coming up, correct? I mean, I know we had a story on Midday on the Farm Bill is being proposed now, and somebody in Congress is pushing extremely hard to get this passed, obviously. So is this something that's going to be done sooner or later?
Last I heard, the estimation is they won't have anything finalized until third quarter this year.
Oh, boy.
So you're talking September.
Man.
I mean, it just takes that long to move things through Congress.
Yeah.
And we'll see what that looks like, but there's certainly plenty of efforts being made. Now, there's all sorts of other things that are happening in the meanwhile that sort of feed into it. There have been a number of changes with EPA and WOTUS, Waters of the United States. And so we are seeing some rollback of some prior situations going on there. We think that we're going to see the EPA have a bit of a slowdown when it comes to product registrations for pesticides and chemistries because of the fact that they've cut a number of people. So how long will it take to bring all of those folks back into getting their work done? Not sure, but we'll watch and see what happens. I feel like this is just like many corporations. They make those cuts, they swing that pendulum pretty far, and then it starts to come back to the center. So we're going to see how that turns out very soon. But in the meantime, we're going to focus on getting a crop in the ground, planning ahead for 2026. We never slow down. I mean, farmers are looking at probably more used equipment than before because they don't want to do new equipment trades. They're doing more work on the farm. The line at John Deere this morning when I stopped was pretty busy. So people are doing more on their own. In fact, I remember, we talk about how this era is similar to what it was in the 80s. And I remember a farmer telling me his dad got really good at welding in the 80s because he didn't trade or buy new. He just kept fixing what he had. So maybe we'll see some different skill packages.
That's not a bad thing.
It is if you're an auctioneer, and that's the guy sitting next to you.
That's true.
And Max is going to be joining us. Max Steffes with On the Auction Block is joining us today in studio. Why wait? Maybe we should just ask some of these questions right now, Max. I mean, are you seeing kind of the same thing that we've just been talking about, that folks are holding on to farm equipment a little bit longer?
Yeah, and through the years doing auction sales up and down North Dakota, there's always been those one or two retirements that stick out of my mind. Mickey Snortland would be one.
Oh.
And of course, Mickey owned Bell Bank.
Yes.
And that was a retirement that you pulled up in the yard, and every generation of international combine going back to 1960, whatever, was in the yard.
Yeah.
And he kept everything. So there's those folks out there that keep things and fix on things. My uncle Greg Steffes was that way. If something broke down, he'd either fix it or buy another one that he could wrench on. And, that's just the way they operate. And some of the guys that do that are pretty handy.
Now, are some of those considered quote-unquote collectibles where you can auction those off?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Some of them are sought after. The more higher use pieces like combines where you're generally bought to be used and to become useless. But there are some older vintage combines that are considered collectible. Most of the guys that collect tractors.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting to note, I was at a farm auction, I think it was a year ago in the fall, and there, some of those older tractors, let's say John Deere's, the A's, the B's, the Johnny Poppers, if you will, weren't selling as fast because the people who could restore them and wanted them had been aging out of their purchasing. Now it's probably the tractors that are 60s, early 70s that are more vintage, if you will.
Yeah, and that's been interesting. I've been in the auction business around it all my life, but full-time for 13 years, and it's a lot like muscle cars. You look at the old 30s and 40s Buicks that used to be worth so much money 10 years ago, and guess what? Those guys are 90 now. So it's the muscle cars that are worth money now, and the tractors are no different. The 4020, you look at a 4020, used to be worth $6,500. You can buy them all day long, and now they're double, triple that.
Absolutely,
nice. It's crazy
because everybody grew up using a 4020.
Exactly.
I mean, I just told a story about one yesterday. And honestly, we all had them. We know how they were the iconic changeover for John Deere when they really made their bigger leaps into the tractor business and got ahead of, at the time, International Harvester. Because fascinatingly enough, International Harvester was a way bigger tractor company than John Deere was for a long time. And that switch happened somewhere around that, 40 series, if you will, 4010s, 4020s. Okay, so Max, one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about today, and actually we have several. Do you feel that, are you seeing a lot more land auctions this spring than you have? Do you feel like with commodity prices the way they are, more folks have said, now's a good time to get out, rent out land, whatever the case might be?
For sure. So anytime we see an uptick activity is usually when markets change. And of course, markets are always changing, but, commodity prices corrected and kind of took a dive for the worse starting in about spring of 2023. So since then, we've been fairly busy with land transactions, and we're just right now at the precipice of where I could say that land values have definitely plateaued and have come down. So that generally draws more sellers to the market as they want to take advantage of the still favorable conditions to sell into. And we have been busier from a land perspective throughout our trade areas.
So as we return, we were talking before we got to the studio today in regards to tariffs and your expansion as a business into Canada and what all of this impact with tariffs is going to look like for your business, for farmers purchasing, et cetera. And we're going to do that after we pick up with the markets. So the markets are brought to us by Goose River Bank. See the new digital banking available with Goose River Bank makes it even easier for Goose River to become your community bank because they believe a strong bank builds strong communities. We'll be right back. Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Technology is supposed to help you and your farm run smoothly, but if you have technology questions about how to make that better, you should contact Chris Sherman over at techsupport.farm. Chris will help you make sure you're in tip-top shape and ready to go to the field, even if it's not your equipment, but with all of your electronic transfers as well. Give Chris a shout. Again, techsupport.farm. We also have the ability for you as a listener to call in and join us on the JLA Insurance phone line. In studio with us today is Max Steffes. Max is with Steffes Group, and we are presenting our segment called On the Auction Block. So we were going to bring this up today, and that is Canada, tariffs, and auctions. How does that all fit together? What's going on?
Yeah, so we kind of have a first-hand seat on that. So a little backstory for the listeners. So last fall, we acquired Bruce Shapansky Auctioneers in Tisdale, Saskatchewan. So since that time, we've grown on a team, hired about 15 additional team members. And last Thursday, Bridgette, as I mentioned, I was up in Canada all week, which was really awesome to get to see what's going on up there from an agriculture perspective. And we actually had our first live auction event in Arcola, Saskatchewan, which for those of you wondering where the heck is Arcola, Saskatchewan, if you shot a gun in Stanley, North Dakota, and you aimed it north, it'd have to go about 100 miles and you'd be in Arcola. So that just north of Stanley is where that would be. And big auction sale with 3 combines, quad tracks, and that sort of thing. And really insightful from a tariff perspective. What was interesting about that auction is to see how many internet buyers were actually from the States. And as a matter of fact, a couple of the folks that were there that purchased equipment through making small talk with some of the bidders were from North Dakota. And I got to talk to one of them that bought the Delta Track on that auction. And, I just asked him, what's your plan? He's like, well, we're going to get in this tractor and we're going to drive it south. Typical farmer. Yeah. And we're just going to get in it. So, that was Thursday. And I thought about that all weekend. And I'm like, I got to call that guy. So I called him yesterday. I said, so tell me, how was your experience? And he kind of laid down what he did. So he ended up getting a truck and trucked it to the Canadian border and then jumped in it. And I guess if you're the operator of the machine and the invoice says your name and you're not commercial use for personal use, he's a farmer, of course, you can just drive it across.
Get out.
Yep. Yeah, just drive it across. So, if you're a North Dakota farmer and you're listening and you want to buy equipment up there, don't send a hired man.
Go.
You can just go. But here's the interesting part. He said something about midnight. He wanted to get back to the States by midnight because on the 5th of April, I think it was.
Yes.
He would have had to cut a check to the border agent for 10% of that purchase. So he bought the tractor for $337 US. He would have had to cut a check for, $37,000 or whatever that maths to.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a change.
That's a change. And going forward, that's all got to get taken into consideration.
Oh, for sure. As an American producer, if you're looking to purchase used equipment or new equipment, from a new equipment perspective, I don't know if there's a ton manufactured up there, but I know like Tile Plows, Braun, and Wolf manufacturers up there. And the tariff on new is 25%.
Yep.
So we talked to a few of the new dealerships, and they're really anxious. One Case International dealer, 9 stores in Canada, and he's got 15 new combines on order for customers that placed him last fall. So he's asking himself 2 questions. A, am I going to stick this farmer with this extra 25%? And the answer is he can't, because that's not what they agreed to.
Right.
And then B, what am I going to do with it if Case forces me to take them? So there's going to be some push and some shove with these dealership networks that have agreed to acquire some of these U.S. made, of course, U.S. manufactured farm machinery implements.
This may sound dumb, and maybe you can't even answer it. But as far as for your business, do the tariffs change anything that you have to do as an auction company when you're doing transactions up there?
No, no, not really, because the onus is on the buyer to do their due diligence. So it doesn't change a whole lot from what we do. Of course, it changes markets, and that's something that we want to be abreast to. So when the cost of new machinery in Canada goes up 25%, obviously that's going to benefit the used machinery market in Canada. So that's a factor. But there's not a whole lot that we need to do. We need to know about it, and we need to be educated so we can talk about it with buyers and bidders.
It doesn't affect the pricing at all?
I think it will. I mean, if you're a farmer and you're sitting there looking at a used combine at an auction in Canada, and you're one of those guys that ordered one of those 15 combines, well, I'm not going to pay. It's $1 million combine, so now it's $1,250,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can go to one of the Steffes auctions or name an auction or and go buy a used one that's right there and not pay that.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to have a lot of that. So, I mean, what does that do? It creates more demand. When demand goes up, prices typically go up.
So you've got auctions coming up this week.
We do.
Any in particular that we could talk about or do some highlights of?
Yeah, so as long as we're on the Canadian front,
Sure.
this Thursday we've got 21 quarters of land in northern Saskatchewan, so that'll be really interesting. And up there, land ownership.
21 quarters.
Yeah,
Hold on. I'm over here
21
doing the
quarters.
math. Okay, never mind.
Land is so much more casual up there. You know, they buy and sell land up there. It's not sacred like it is down here. You know, in ag circles down here, you never sell land, and it's highly sought after.
What's the reason for that?
There's just so much of it, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not as valuable. You know, so they'll get 500,000, 600,000 a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll get $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just traded more. The other thing that's interesting up there, like we did our retirement auction for Blake, and gosh, I don't even know if he's 50. And a lot of guys up there will retire 2 or 3 times and just fire up again.
Yep.
And he sold all of his land, which is highly unusual. When we do a retirement in the States, they keep that because that's their retirement.
That's the 401k version for farmers.
Yep, exactly. So that's interesting. So that's coming up this Thursday. So that'll be interesting to see what shakes out on that. You know, from a land auction regionally here, we're kind of getting to that point where farmers are hoping to get in the field. So we're kind of wrapping up our spring auction season from a land perspective. There are a few tracts of land coming up, including 80 acres on the Clay County side over by Downer. That's CRP land that's kind of fringe, might be able to be farmed.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to that next Thursday. And then it kind of gets quiet until usually the land market fires up again in about September.
Yeah, we go to the field.
We go to the field,
gets
get a
all
crop in.
excited about planting the crop, and I'll worry about new land deals later.
Exactly.
I mean, you always have your eye out, because what if that quarter that adjoins yours or that half section, can't let that go.
No, I can't.
So
let
you got to
that
keep
go.
an eye out.
Yeah, and I've always said, you know, we could sell. I think in today's environment, because land is so sought after, I think we could have a land auction 365 days a year, especially if it's good land and people would be there.
You could. You absolutely could. All right, we've covered a lot of ground, literally and figuratively today, Max. So where can folks come and follow you besides the fact that we will have you on again next month? Later this month in April, we'll have Brad Olstead join us from Steffes Group. And again, this segment's called On the Auction Block. But how do they find you, Max?
For sure. So lots of activity coming up this spring yet from equipment perspective. Just go to steffesauctioneers.com. You can take a look at everything we got coming up. And if you're thinking about selling something, we'd love to visit with you.
That works out great.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Good deal. Thanks,
You
Max.
bet. Thanks, guys.
All right. So, Bridgette, we got some ag topics to talk about when we come back.
We do.
We'll kind of recap the weather as well. And if you have any questions for us, shoot us a call, 701-293-9000. Again, that's 701-293-9000. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Maybe you're spending this day getting your planter prepped. Well, you're on a parts run. I did one of those earlier this week. Never know what you're up to today, but we're glad you're joining us right here on the air. And if you wanted to watch by video, you could find us on Facebook and YouTube under WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus, as well as Acres TV. If you haven't yet signed up for Acres TV, you can go right ahead. That, in fact, is a free subscription for you. And then you can follow it like the Netflix of agriculture all across the different disciplines. Okay, so later today, Dean and I are actually going to get ready to start talking over our Here We Grow project. We're raising wheat this year, and we've got some folks that are going to be involved from beginning to end as sponsors for it. One of them is Codeco Fuels and Propane, because everybody in the field, from the pickups to the tractors, need fuel to roll. If we were thinking about drying any grain, we'd certainly want to talk to them about propane. And then Ellingson Companies. Ellingson is not just about drainage. That's certainly what they're well known for, is drain tile in the region. But if you're looking at doing some excavation work and so forth, so much more, they would be happy to work with you. Now, they're not going to dig your basement, but if you need to lay some piping, water lines, et cetera, other things like that, that's a call to Ellingson. And my favorite skill I learned last year in Here We Grow with corn was how to turn on a drain tile pump. I've told that secret, and I'm not allowed to share that information with anybody else. So I'm glad to have that little tidbit.
Oh, man. Well, let's hit some ag topics here real quick, Bridgette.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that are going on. You know, as we mentioned with Max when he was in studio here just a few minutes ago, Max Steffes, we were talking about tariffs. And one of the greatest concerns for tariffs from Canada is potash. Potash is a form of potassium. We use it in the field. In fact, I'm going to go get my notes on it right now. Okay, so when we're talking about potash, the reason that we need it is for plant water uptake, drought resistance, nutrient transportation, photosynthesis. So really the lifeblood systems within the plant. Now, 90% of our potash comes out of Canada. I've been fortunate enough to be up there at some of the mines in the past, et cetera. And what are tariffs going to do to it? Well, initially, tariffs were going to be on our potash, but I saw a report just yesterday, I think it was yesterday or Friday, that potash is on the exemption list, so we won't get a tariff on the potash coming in. Now, how long does that exemption last? I'm not that good to tell you, I know, but at least for right now, there's a couple things. We should have enough potash in plants, in fertilizer plants across the region to get us started into spring. It's when we are backfilling those plants that we could potentially have to worry about, is there still a tariff on there? If we fill in the next few months, likely we won't, but how does that change? I feel like this whole tariff thing is incredibly dynamic. A greater question is, why can't we produce enough potash here in our own country?
Do we have the mines for it? Or?
We don't have the mines for it, and I think the technology for production isn't there yet. Everybody's trying to design something new, right? Just yesterday we talked about butter made from carbon dioxide in the air and hydrogen from a water molecule. Which, don't get me started.
That still cracks me up.
I'm like, for those of you who thought margarine was a bad idea, let's not go to this one. But now, when you think through, can we start producing our own potash? I'm not sure that we're really there yet. Again, potash is the source of potassium. Potassium is a mineral. You can see it on the charts we all had in chemistry. So it's hard to recreate those types of things. We'll see where this goes, but I think farmers are watching pretty closely.
Gotcha.
We need the potash.
And I don't believe we touched this subject yesterday.
Sure.
What about pigs heading into China?
I think we talked about it
Did
just
we touch
briefly,
it yesterday? Okay.
But realistically, the reason for that is before we all got nuts about what's going on with tariffs, et cetera, and I say we very loosely.
That was my follow-up.
Yeah.
How would tariffs affect that?
I think that's because what happened was a couple weeks ago, China had approved 300 different processing facilities that could be sending pork over to China. And China is the world's largest market for pork products. But now with tariffs and everything being reciprocal, how will that affect what's going to happen for that pork market? I think I would be watching all that very, very closely. And you have to, no matter what commodity you're in. Really, the only people that are sort of looking back and saying, wow, we're doing pretty good right now is a beef producer. But even they're nervous because they would love to have more cattle to sell. They just don't have them. 3 years ago, we were downsizing our herd because drought, poor prices, that type of thing. And so when you downsize cattle, it's not like you can go crank them out of a 3D printer. I
true.
realize there are some companies out there that want to 3D print your meat. This is going to go right along with that butter from carbon. I don't think I'm ready for that. I'm not a fan.
I can't see that being healthy, but
So the way they want to do it with the beef is literally to take DNA or take tissue samples from a beef animal and then replicate them in a lab. So it's a cell cultured beef. But that asks all sorts of questions. First of all, there's the whole, are you playing God?
You are,
'Cause
yes.
people were upset when we had Dolly the cloned sheep.
Yeah.
Then who owns those genetics? And I don't want you taking a sample from my beef herd and then replicating it for your profit. Don't I get a royalty
You should.
off of that?
Yeah.
So those are some pretty big questions. Where's that cell culture coming from to start? And how are you going to label it? Is that real beef because it came from DNA and the actual animal material, or is it not? How are you going to label it?
That's where technology is. There's too much of a good thing in certain circumstances, and
in certain circumstances, I mean, I guess I just have that bigger question is, how are you going to make this more of a black and white question? Because there's too much gray for me.
how's it going to taste?
What I see, and I've not ever eaten a cell-cultured meat. I have eaten plant-based meats, which are heavily laden in sodium and have like beet juice, so it replicates the look of beef, etc. And because I eat really good beef on a regular basis, I know the difference. Most of the public doesn't. If your good quality beef, as far as you're concerned, is generally coming off of a fast food industry that's maybe not your best quality, and you might not know the difference if you slap it full of ketchup, mustard, and cheese and say, that tasted like any other burger I've ever had. So you can dress it up however you want. But the cell-cultured meat, I'm just curious how they're going to do that. And that's one aspect of it. There's another company out of Israel. They were looking at being able to take that cell-cultured meat and then 3D print it so they could print it into steaks and roasts. So if you're worried about organic, I'd say this is your least problem right now. It's some of the other things that could be coming out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the 70s and 80s? Is that okay?
Well, gas was cheap, but I don't know, bell bottoms and beehive hairdos.
Hey, it's coming back. Well, the bell bottoms.
Yeah, we've had those come back a couple times. I honestly, okay, so maybe this is a little bit too off track. I distinctly remember the day that gas prices went up because we were, after church, we stopped at the local service station, which was a classmate to my dad. We're filling the car with gas for the ride home. And I remember my dad saying, gas is $1 a gallon? Well, we can never afford this. You kids aren't driving around in town anymore. I just thought, oh my gosh, if it's more than $1, we're all ruined.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, if times change.
I don't even know what I paid at the pump this morning because, frankly, I needed the fuel. I was going. That's just how it was going to be.
You have to, right?
Yeah, you have to. Okay, so also, as we talk about tariffs and all that type of thing, and I think I've mentioned this before, when it comes to the tariffs on product coming out of China, ag chem will be influenced. And by that, I mean your fungicides, insecticides, et cetera. A lot of those inert materials or even the raw ingredients that go into that product is produced in China, other Asian countries. We get yellow phosphorus out of Russia, et cetera. And with those tariffs, we will see price increases probably in 26. The reason I say 26 is a lot of the product that we would need for the 2025 crop is currently on our shores. It's in warehouses and it's placed around the country. It'll be what happens later.
And
now,
it trickles down too.
Oh, sure. It's going to go to the consumer.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that we are currently, oddly, at a bit of a low for a lot of chemistries. That we've just seen some incremental downturns in chemistry pricing over the last couple of years. So that's maybe a little bit of a switch than most people were expecting. We do see a huge uptick on what we're seeing, what we see for biologicals. And by biologicals, I mean you are not buying a synthetic pesticide. You are buying something that is naturally occurring in the environment, but being used, say, as a disease prevention, bug prevention, that type of thing. And I hesitate to say naturally derived because some are still somewhat synthetic. There's a real variability in them, and they're not labeled the same as traditional chemistries are. So we don't always know what's going on in those jugs as clearly as we did before. Other things that have taken a little turn, ammonium sulfate, dry fertilizer, that saw a notable reduction in national pricing over the last year as well. Many of us are familiar also with dry AMS. We use it in our spray tanks as a adjuvant, especially if you're spraying glyphosate in North Dakota in order to combat hard water conditions, et cetera. We use a lot of AMS up here. And we also see that in 2004, some of the product that came out of China, as far as volume-wise, 100% of our atrazine, 99% of our glyphosate, so most of our glyphosate is not manufactured in the U.S., 85% of glufosinate, most of you know that under the name Liberty or Liberty Ultra, 75% of clethodim, and 49% of 2,4-D. So it's interesting to note those would be the products that will be affected first and foremost when it comes to tariffs and so forth. And you know, we have these talks every year about something a little bit different. For a while there was fuel prices and transportation costs as we try to move things around the country. So we'll see what they look like over a little bit of time. I don't know if I'm telling any farmers anything new, but it's probably for those in the non-farming community who are maybe learning a little bit more today.
And going back to gas earlier,
yeah.
You know, it's down to what, $60 a barrel. Normal when it was $60
on crude, you mean, not gas, but on crude oil.
Crude, yeah. When it was $60 a barrel before, we were at $2.50 a gallon, or roughly even cheaper than that, and now we're still sitting right around $3.
Remember what happened? We went way over $4, so that we established a new low. So now when we're paying $3, people are like, "Oh, well, gas is down." That happens every single time. And I remember this stat from probably 10 years ago, and if it's not the right one, someone email me, ag@flagfamily.com, or give us a call on the JLA insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. And I remember hearing this, that in order for the Bakken in North Dakota to be most effective, we need crude to be at $85 a barrel. So there was a reason why we fracked all those wells and got it ready, so that when crude prices changed, we were prepared to be able to go out and pump more oil out of the wells. And I don't know if that $85 a barrel number still stands, but that's the one that's stuck with me for a while.
Oof.
We'll see what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on break here, so when we come back, we'll have another hit on the weather, kind of give you an idea of what it looks like for this upcoming weekend, and I'll take a sneak peek in what it looks like going into Easter weekend as well. I know a lot of people may be traveling around the area, so we'll have those details and more coming up right after the break. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. It's 1:53 in the afternoon on this Tuesday, April 8th. And it's a pretty decent day out there. Temperature is right around 40 degrees. We'll warm up about another 5-6 degrees into the mid to upper 40s across the area. But we are going to see some high clouds increasing from the west. But all in all, not a bad day. Just a little bit on the breezy side with those southeast winds gusting up and over 20. As we head into tonight, we'll see those clouds thicking up. An isolated shower or two is possible with lows down into the mid-30s. And Wednesday, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds, a little bit warmer, mid to upper 50s. A slight chance of a morning sprinkle, and then again late in the day. But most of the day should be on the drier side as winds turn to the west 10 to 20. And then a cold front comes through Wednesday night, Thursday morning. That'll trigger off an isolated shower or two. Again, we're not expecting much precip out of that. And cooler on Thursday. We're dropping back into the 40s with a northwest wind 10 to 25. Now, we quickly warm up on Friday. Friday is going to be a beautiful one. Plenty of sunshine. The winds will increase a little bit in the afternoon out of the southwest, about 10 to 20, and highs in the low 60s, and then it just turns downright windy on Saturday. We'll have winds gusting between 30 and 40 out of the south, and highs in the upper 60s, so it'll feel nice and mild. And then clouds come back in Saturday night, and we'll see a few showers on the day on Sunday, and could pick up a quarter inch or so out of that, with highs in the low 60s, but then a cold front swings through Sunday night, and we could even have some wet snow and wind Sunday night into Monday. It's still early April. I mean, well, we're going into mid-April now, but still. Temperatures fall back into the 40s on Monday. Now, Easter week next week, I'm sure a lot of people have travel plans as we get closer to Easter. And right now, it looks like, although we'll start the week on the cool side, we will warm things up as we head into Easter weekend. It looks like as we head towards Thursday, Friday, we might see a little bit of light rain come into the area. And then we warm things up Easter weekend, it looks like, at least the first half of it, with temperatures in the 60s and 70s, it looks like, across the state. And it looks like good travel weather, too.
People will appreciate that because we've had some years where we've been snowed in for Easter. But Easter falls slightly differently, right? It's the early times in March that usually hamper us the most. So have you ever driven past a field and you've seen that white patch out there? It's not snow, but there's nothing growing, and it's just on the soil surface. It looks white.
Right.
So any idea what that might be?
I thought it was like mold or something.
Okay. So it's actually saline. It's a salt.
Okay.
So we do have soils, and this is like, we'll call it our educational soils corner for today. Our listener, Sarah, will be so pleased. Saline soils have an excessive level of water-soluble salts in the soil water, which are a combination of positively and negatively charged ions. Look at me talking soil science, the kid who barely made it through that soil science class. So when you have high levels of ions from soluble salts, they restrict the normal water uptake by the plant roots. So even when the soils are visibly wet, the plants are drought stressed. It's called an osmotic effect. So essentially, salinity or excess water-soluble salts create an artificial drought-like condition for the plant. So often we see those areas in the field that have that white appearance to them, and plants don't grow there well. We don't do well with soybeans. Our corn will always look drought-stressed in that area. Kochia thrives in it as a weed. So does foxtail barley. There are some cereal grains that will do a little bit better in that type of a soil situation. So we have to manage that because you don't want a 2 or 3 acre piece of the field that you're paying for or renting that's non-productive. So there's reasons why people want to look for changes in order to be able to make that more usable land. In contrast to the saline soil, there's a sodic soil. It means it's highly saturated with salt ions during its cation exchange sites. And so compared to the other soils, the saline soils, there's a combination of low salt levels that promote what's called the soil dispersion. And that means that it's breaking down the soil aggregates, gives really terrible soil structure overall. So just when you think that all we have to do is go ahead and put that wheat seed in the ground and go, it's going to be easy. We just need a little rain now and then. Mm-hmm. No, there's a few other things we got to take care of too.
Wow.
And sometimes it can have to do with the saline or sodacy of the plant, of the soil.
And like we were talking earlier already, wheat is being planted.
Yep.
South of town here.
Yes.
Now, soil temperature for corn, we've got to get that up. It's got to be right around 50, but you can plant in the 40s, right?
We could. Last year we had some folks that took that risk and planted a little early when the soils were colder than what we would traditionally consider a good idea. And it worked because then we got like 2.5 weeks of rain that kept us out of the field. So everybody's got to make the best decision for their field. It's not just a widespread choice.
Right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus. Also, if you would like to know what the LRC looks like for your area, or for our area, I should say, for the spring and summer, we posted all of that up on our website, WDAYradionow.com. You can follow along day by day when these storms are expected in the area. So for Bridgette, myself, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show, that's coming up next.